Hi, Yoshi Monika here. In this video, we'll have a closer look at the rectus abdominis, one of our abdominal muscles. We will talk about anatomy and function, and to get a muscle into action and you a stronger core, we chose one of our favorite exercises, an ab roll rollout. So it doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a yogi, or fitness enthusiast, you will get something out of this video.
First, let's talk about the core muscles and why it is important to have a strong core. The word core is being thrown around a lot on social media, and many still think that core only refers to the abdominals, or even worse, only to the six-pack. Reality is though that the abs are only a fraction of the core, and in fact also include the muscles of your back, the hip flexors, the glutes, and the diaphragm. And just to give you an idea, the erectus spinae, the latissimus dorsi, which we discussed in our previous video, the QL and the multifidus are the back muscles that belong to the core. And of course you're right when you think the six-pack is part of the core. But besides the rectus abdominis, the internal and external obliques, as well as the transversus abdominis, also play a role, as does the iliopsoas, the hip flexor muscles, and of course the glutes. Think of your core as the central link between the upper and the lower body. And whether you're mopping the floor or hitting a tennis ball, almost every single movement either originates in the core or moves through it, which means a solid core creates power, strength, and stabilization. It's the foundation for your body. Challenging your core daily will improve posture and balance, boost your agility, and prevent injury. And with that, you can optimize your everyday movements and improve your athletic performance. And what a lot of people don't realize, breathwork and core training go hand in hand. If you develop a stronger breathing practice by consciously incorporating the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm, you will create a stronger core. But it also works the other way around. If you develop a stronger core, breathing will become a lot easier because you improve posture and you allow the organs and the diaphragm to sit in their proper positions. And with that, your inhalations and exhalations become fuller, deeper, and stronger, and you can dramatically enhance your workouts.
Let's talk about the muscles that are located in the midline of our trunk. The rectus abdominis, our six-pack muscle, and the pyramidalis, a small triangular muscle at the bottom and in front of the rectus abdominis. The rectus abdominis originates on each side of the pubic crest and the pubic symphysis. The muscle fibers run vertically, or as the Latin word rectus says, straight up, and insert on the cartilages of the ribs 5, 6, and 7, and the xiphoid process, the bottom part of the sternum. This long flat muscle is separated by a white line running up in the middle, the linea alba, which literally means white line in Latin. The linea alba is formed by a flat tendinous sheet of the lateral ab muscles, the external and internal obliques, and the transversus abdominis. This sheath is called aponeurosis, and joined together in the middle creates the linea alba, which makes the right and left side of the rectus abdominis visible. We'll talk about how this rectus sheath is created in a moment. Lateral along the rectus abdominis on each side of the muscle, we have another white line, and this is called the linea semilunaris. And of course, what gives the abs that characteristic six-pack appearance are little breaks, horizontal bands, which separate the muscle into various parts. These are called tendinous intersections, and you can see them on people with low body fat or more muscle mass in the rectus abdominis. The main action of the rectus abdominis is to flex the trunk forward, regardless of whether you're doing sit-ups or going through the daily motions. A unique aspect of the rectus abdominis is that you can work the muscle from both sides. For example, when doing sit-ups, you can either keep the pelvis planted on the floor and lift your torso off the ground, or you can reverse the direction and lift your lower body, including your buttocks, off the ground. Another function of the rectus abdominis is to tense the abdominal wall, and with that compress and provide support for the abdominal organs so nothing can move around. for example when you're exercising. Contracting the rectus abdominis also helps prevent a hyperextension of the lumbar spine and protects it in backward bends, like we see quite often in yoga. And another useful function of a strong rectus abdominis is to assist in breathing, coughing, vomiting, urination, defecation, and in childbirth. The second muscle I want to talk about is the pyramidalis, a small triangular muscle in front of and at the bottom of the rectus abdominis. The origin is on top on each side of the pubic bone and the insertion is the linea alba. And its only action is to tense the linea alba, pulling it down towards the pubis. An interesting fact about a pyramidalis is that only 80% of people have it. Some people have only one part of the muscle on the right or left side. And the muscle can vary in length and thickness. Let's put it this way, the pyramidalis is not as important and its action can easily be replaced by the rectus abdominis. And to finish this anatomy section about the rectus abdominis and the pyramidalis, we have to talk about their protection, which is provided by a very thin, flat and quite strong tendon, the rectus sheath. And like I mentioned earlier, this sheath is formed by the aponeurosis of the three lateral muscles, the external internal obliques and the transversus abdominis. So let me explain this now by switching over to a cross-section of the rectus abdominis. So here you can see both halves of the rectus muscle with the linea alba in the middle. Laterally we have the three muscles, the external obliques, the outermost muscle, following in the middle with the internal obliques, and the innermost muscle, the transversus abdominis. On the way towards the midline, all three muscles stop right before the rectus abdominis to form a flat tendon, which is called the aponeurosis. When looking from the front at the abdominals, the aponeurosis can be visible at the edge of the rectus abdominis and is known as the linea semilunaris. So here are the aponeurosis of all three muscles from the rectus sheath. Wherever we are on the rectus abdominis, on the upper or lower portion, the rectus sheath continues to move around the muscle towards the midline to unite and form the linea alba. But to be even more precise, only the upper three quarters of the rectus abdominis are fully enclosed, front and back, by the rectus sheath. At the bottom quarter of the muscle, only the anterior side is covered. Let me explain this by using two different pictures. This cross-section is from the upper section of the rectus abdominis. You can see how the surfaces on both sides of the rectus abdominis are covered. We have an anterior and a posterior layer of the rectus sheath. You can also see how the aponeurosis of the superficial external obliques moves towards the anterior surface of the muscle. The aponeurosis of the internal oblique splits and one half passes in front of and the other half passes behind the rectus abdominis. The aponeurosis of the deepest muscle, the transversus abdominis, goes posterior to the rectus abdominis. So the anterior rectus sheath contains the external and half of the internal aponeurosis, while the posterior rectus sheath contains the transversus aponeurosis and the other half of the internal aponeurosis. So now in the next picture, I show you the lower quarter of the rectus abdominis muscle, and as you can see, it is slightly different. The three aponeuroses from the posterior part now passes anteriorly of the rectus abdominis. And the point where the change of direction happens and the aponeurosis cross to the front of the rectus abdominis is called the arcuate line. Now, all that's left behind the rectus abdominis is an inner layer of the posterior sheath, the transversalis fascia. And the reason why this is worth mentioning is that this fascia helps to compress the abdominal content, but even more importantly, prevents the abdominal muscles from crushing into the organs.
Now that we've learned quite a lot about the anatomy of the rectus abdominis, it's time to put it into practice and get the abs to work. And if you want results, the ab wheel rollout is hands down the way to go. But before we show you our ab wheel rollout routine, let's first focus on the setup and the execution, as well as some of the most common mistakes and how you can avoid them. And talking about the setup, the most important part is the position of your back and hips. Like Yoshi mentioned earlier, one of the main functions of the rectus abdominis is to flex the spine. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should go into an overflexion of the spine, But if you're familiar with a cat pose in yoga, you know that the tailbone needs to be slightly tucked under to create an easy roundness in the back. Don't round your back excessively. All you do is go from all fours with a neutral spine into a small posterior pelvic tilt. And once you're in that position, you want to keep it throughout the entire exercise. Now, if we're talking about the rollout, sure, the goal is to eventually roll out all the way so that you almost touch the ground. But if you're new to this exercise, make sure that you roll out only as far as you can still keep your posterior pelvic tilt, and with that, proper alignment. And if you're wondering why I'm stressing this point so much, it's all about keeping the pressure on the lumbar spine to a minimum. And of course, if you're more advanced, you want to try to roll out all the way. In fact, you could even try to hold it there for a moment. Or if you're up for even more of a challenge, you could lift your knees off the ground on the way back or try a standing ab wheel rollout. But no matter which variation you choose or how far you roll out, the key is to keep your focus on the abs at all times and never arch your lower back. And of course, the abdominals initiate the movement when you're rolling back. But a lot of people let the hips do the work. And that's when you're ruining all the hard work that you've put in so far. So never let the hips lead the way and always move the wheel and the hips together. And if this is a question of strength, I would highly recommend that you only roll out to the point where you can feel the edge of the challenge. And when you roll back, make sure that you stop the hips directly over the knees. Don't push them all the way back to the heels. Remember, you want to focus on good quality reps rather than cranking out dozens of crappy ones. If you do the ab wheel rollout right, you shouldn't be able to do more than 12 to 16 reps. And a practical tip on the side, I would highly recommend that you use some kind of cushioning underneath your knees. Whether you use a mat or roll up a towel, your knees will thank you later. And I already mentioned two of the most common mistakes: having an arch in the back and sitting your hips all the way back on your heels. But let me talk about a couple more mistakes that you definitely want to avoid. The first would be to simply lower your upper body and your head to the floor without actually moving the hips. I'm not entirely sure what this would be good for. Maybe to open up the shoulders, but it definitely won't strengthen the abs. And the last thing before we show you our ab wheel rollout workout, make sure that you keep the arms completely straight during the movement. Don't bend the elbows and let them come down to the floor or out to the sides. Now get ready, get your ab wheel and roll with us to work on your six-pack.